Clytus, I'm bored. What plaything can you offer me today?
An obscure body in the SK system, Your Majesty. The inhabitants refer to it as
the Ming Power Hour.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to
the Ming Power Hour.
And here to bring some wildlife back to life, here's my partner, Danny Bennett.
I'm here today, and it is my great privilege to meet up with my cohort in crime, Rick Morgan, and also our distributor, our pharmaceuticals distributor, Bo Ransdell. Puts that ship Legion podcast on the air for you to hear. So we're here to talk about two early 80s movies, John Carpenter's romantic sci-fi thriller Starman.
There's a Starman.
And 1981's Arthurian legend tour de force by John Borman, Excalibur. And I'm thrilled to death to be able to talk to you about it. Go all the way to the end because there's a whole lot of content.
Oh, yeah. Lots of stuff. It's a great, great movie. I love both of these, really. So another great pair to revisit.
You may be hearing this as the beginning, but it's actually the end because we just taped it. So we're a little bit tongue-tied. We've done so much talking.
Yes, we've worked hard for you, the listeners.
Because we love you.
That's right. It's the only reason. Speaking of that, talking about spreading the love, we've got some new things going on. If you guys have noticed, we got merchandise for one thing. So I've noticed where people are ordering T-shirts and stuff like that. That's really, really cool. Never in 100 years would I thought people would buy T-shirts of me and Danny talking. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. But, hey, that's cool, you know. We're not making a penny off that either. It's just, that's the price of what that stuff is. So if you're interested in that stuff, it's on the Facebook page. You can find the link to it. Go to it. We got all kinds of stuff. Water bottles, coffee mugs, you name it.
Right. And I'm sure we can work something out where if you really want a T-shirt that has Rick and I on it and maybe a poster, you know, saying, you know, will you marry me or something? And
sure.
We could probably get that done too.
Yeah.
What better way to say I love you than with the gift of a spatula?
Yes. Hail Ming spatulas coming soon. So look out for that for sure. Also, just as a weird kind of request, people are wanting ringtones of things that are from our show. So if you're interested in anything like that, shoot us a message on Facebook. We'll hook you up. I think that's pretty cool. So people wanted like their messages to go, Hail Ming, or stuff like that. So whatever floats your boat. Also, at the time we're recording this, I'm a little late on this one, but I want to give a quick little shout out to Eric Taylor, a buddy of mine at work. And they just had a new addition to their family. They had a new baby girl. So congratulations on that. Keep listening, man. He's a big fan of the show and just appreciate that. But wish him and his family all the best.
Congratulations, Eric. And just a word to the wise, the Hail Ming Power Hour spatula is not for food preparation. Yep. It is for decoration only.
Right. Yeah. Just be careful with that.
Congratulations on your baby girl, though. When a child is born, a father is born.
Wow. We're getting deep now, folks.
Oh, deep in it. All the time.
All right.
Enjoy the episode.
All right. We'll be right back. The episode.
In 1984, the movie Starman was released in theaters directed by John Carpenter. That same year, David Bowie sat down to do an interview with Music Television. That interview has never before been heard until now.
There's a starman waiting in the sky. come and meet us, but he thinks he blew our minds. There's a starman waiting in the sky. He's told us not to blow it, 'cause he knows it's all worthwhile. He's over. Let the children use it. Let the children use it.
Hello, this is David Bowie, and I would like to invite you to watch my new documentary called Starman. It's just been released in theaters. It's about a man from space that comes down.
Yeah, man. Excuse me, David. This movie is not about you, man.
What do you mean?
No, it's a John Carpenter film in theaters right now. It's not a documentary.
What in the bloody hell do you mean it's not about me?
It stars Jeff Bridges, for Christ's sake.
It's called Starman, and it's about a man from space that comes down, just like in the song, like Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders.
Look, David, look. Don't be a space oddity, all right? I know you're going through some changes, but we could be heroes, if just for one day.
No.
Let's dance, David. Go. Share the fade. I know you're under pressure from the China girl, but don't bow down to the man who sold the world.
Well, bloody hell, then.
We just need to get along with some modern love. That's all I'm saying.
What are you talking about? How could this not be about me? It's called Starman. It's about a man from space. You're trying to say it has nothing to do with David Bowie? I've already done this bloody movie anyway. The Man Who Fell to Earth is the exact same premise.
All right. Episode 11. Can't believe we made it this long because Danny's hard to work with. But,
Shut up.
Shut up, Linda. Yeah, man. Super excited about this. The man behind the plan. The reason that we got hooked up with Legion Podcast. Our sensei, I guess you would say. So tickled to have him on the show. And that would be Mr. Bo Ransdell.
Yeah! Hey, everybody. I like how the clapping just abruptly stops and then kicks in for a second again. That's great. That's about what I deserve.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah. Of just like, we're enthusiastic, then let's get a look at you. You know what? Here's just the appropriate amount of pandering applause. Hey, no, it's awesome to be here. I can't wait to talk about both of these movies for totally different reasons. But for those who don't know me, yes, I run legionpodcasts.com, where you can hear this very show, as well as other shows I do, like Hero Hero Go Show, which is all about Asian horror.
It's awesome.
And Duncan, do what?
I said, that's awesome.
Oh, thanks. You were on, and eventually I will get Danny into the fold.
Yes.
I do Duncan and Bo Come Correct with Duncan McLeish, who you had on an earlier episode, and sorry about that. And the Shodcast, which is all about video games. And I'm also a screenwriter. And if you like slasher movies, you might like Lost After Dark, which is the one I wrote.
Which is really good. I enjoyed it a lot.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's one of those things like you have to almost have seen about 5 other movies, and then the movie totally works. If you've never seen a slasher before, I don't know that it's entirely successful. But it was a movie made for horror fans.
Right.
There are a lot of callbacks to Fulci and Carpenter, of course. And it's one of those movies.
Tips a hat to a lot of things in the genre, and that's what I enjoyed about it. So if you're a horror fan, absolutely check that movie out.
Yeah, and I get like 1/8 of a cent every time somebody buys a copy. So, buy 3,000 or 4,000 preferably. We have some stock. So that's all the stuff I do. And I also do a little prose writing and all that kind of stuff. But if you want to find out what I'm doing, go to legionpodcasts.com, and that's the majority of everything I do.
So I kind of asked Bo to do this because I knew I would screw it all up because, like I said, he's involved in so many things. But Danny and I are very, very thankful that he heard our first show and kind of took us under his wing and taught us a lot of things. And we just really appreciate that and glad to have him on the show. He's a fun character as well. So just tickled to have him on here.
Thanks, man. Also, I want to pitch an idea for you guys. I'm thinking of starting a a pro Braveheart podcast where we just sit around and take each scene of Braveheart and talk about how awesome it is. Yeah. And it's just going to be called This Is for Duncan.
I think it should be called Freedom!
Yeah.
So, what we're going to do is jump straight into our first movie. Of course, I'm talking about 1984's Starman. And to give us a synopsis on that, we have Bullwinkle Moose.
Hello, boys and girls. This is Bullwinkle Moose. Starman, 1984. An alien takes form of a young widow's husband and asks her to drive him from Wisconsin to Arizona. The government tries to stop them. It got a 7.0 out of 10. And it also reminds me of a little poem. Starman, Starman on the wall. Don't you have any brains at all? Can't you see the walls has been plastered? Can't you see that, you little Starman?
Well done. You know, my favorite Bullwinkle moment ever has to be, hey, Rocky, I think this is an A-bomb. And Rocky says, A-bomb? And he goes, yeah, that's what some people call our show. It's so good.
I grew up a
I think
Bullwinkle
my favorite Bullwinkle moment is when he just read Starman on our show.
Yeah, fair enough. You're right. Like he's...
Our in-house studio crowd loves it.
He's a major get, apparently.
I like that last guy. All right. I'm going to launch right in with the first reason I have to watch Starman.
Okay.
And that is Charles Martin Smith as Mark Sherman. All right. I might be off the reservation here. Sure, there are lots of reasons to watch it. There's space mysticism. But the guy that keeps bringing you home to the story, the guy that brings like a real goodness to the overarching government system is Charles Martin Smith. You might remember him from Never Cry Wolf. He played the researcher who ate the mice and saved the wolves up in Alaska, who lived with them. For me, when I was watching this movie, he kept bringing me home. Every time I started to stray like into the story, because the story is a love story, it's a sci-fi story, it's got a lot of elements. He brought it home, and he restored my faith in the whole experience.
He's fantastic. The scene where he first goes into the ship after they drill into it and finds the record that they sent on the probe,
right?
And says, this is a record. I actually helped put this together. It says, hello, here's where we're located. Come by and see us sometime.
Right.
And he is. I think the whole movie, not to get too deep into this, but I think the whole movie is this argument about individuals being good, organizations being bad. And he is that individual within an organization that is doing all the right things and trying to actually, he encapsulates the wonder of this thing of like, here's an alien being who's traveled to Earth, and all I want to do is ask him some questions,
Right.
And he restores your faith.
Yeah, you see him respond when he goes to the lab and they've got all the straps to hold him down and all this stuff, and he's like, wow, greetings, welcome to Earth, And,
he has a lot of those moments of like we invited him here. Like, forget morality. What about basic hospitality? We invited him to our planet. Yeah.
So that ties into my first reason: Rolling Stones in space. So the opening, you have where we've launched the Voyager 2 into space to make contact, and while it's burning its way through space, you hear a little Rolling Stones with "I can't get no satisfaction." Yeah,
it's awesome. Like, I don't know how much they paid for usage of that, because they only use it briefly once, really, and then Jeff Bridges sings it a little bit, which you still have to pay royalties for. But but I do like that. I think it's a pretty striking image, and it's the thing that what's his face? The guy the smart guy in the wheelchair, Stephen Hawking.
Yeah.
Which is what it says on his business cards.
I can't get no satisfaction.
Right. But yeah, he says like, this is a terrible idea. We should not be sending these things out into space to let possibly much further advanced civilizations know where we are and roughly what technological state we're in, because we could end up all being slaves.
We could have sent them some Ice Baby, some Vanilla Ice.
I mean, that's a declaration of war. You send Vanilla Ice to another planet, they are loading up the Space Armada.
Or we could have sent Tiffany, you know. I don't mean like an album. I'm talking about like actually Tiffany. Just load her up, send her. That kind of deal.
Right. You know, reenact the scene from like Mega Gator versus Crocolisk or whatever, where Debbie Gibson and Tiffany fight.
Right.
You just use that set as one big trap to shoot them into space. I'm fine with that.
I think that they probably need to send the movie Flashdance.
Oh, yes. That'd definitely do it.
Yeah.
You guys have, as far as I hear it, sworn to do that in your last episode. So that's how, in my mind, that's how this mythology exists. That Flashdance marks the end of Hail Mary.
There are rumors about us. Isn't that cute? Next point. Why don't you take it away, Bo?
I mean, Jeff Bridges. His performance is incredible in this movie. In fact, I think he was nominated for an Oscar for it. And it's fun to see his performance go from, I barely understand English, and I have these canned phrases that I can repeat. And throughout the film, he becomes more conversational and more human, which is really the thrust of the story is him feeling human emotions and that kind of thing.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, he's incredible in it. Like and I feel like this is the real beginning of Jeff Bridges' weirdo performances.
Sure.
Because he's, the King Kong, the De Laurentiis King Kong, he's a little weird in that movie, but not nearly like this, where it's just like, you're playing an alien, and Jeff Bridges is like, I got it.
Yeah.
I have never felt quite like one of you. This is going to be perfect for me. I think he's fantastic.
I'm glad you brought up the King Kong. I'm a fan. I love that version.
Yeah. Oh, tick of the clock, geologically speaking. That's a movie that I've seen more than any human being should. So
every version of it with the extra scenes or retake scenes, I've got all that stuff. So.
Oh, okay. I don't know if I've seen all that stuff. I might have over the course. It's been years since I've seen it, but it's one of those that I feel like I could probably pretty much recite. That was also the beginning of later when we talk about my crush on Karen Allen.
Oh, Jessica Lange, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
there is a sheer dress and a waterfall. That's all you need to know about that movie.
That's what I think.
Fun fact about Godzilla, the Dino De Laurentiis Godzilla. It actually was originally going to be titled Starman 2.
Sure.
Yep.
He
comes back.
Godzilla learns to love.
Giant gorilla. Oh, he's still Starman. It's still Jeff Bridges.
Oh, okay.
So
but Godzilla is still a giant gorilla. It's just Jeff Bridges came. He found a way to stay in the body, and while he was there, he found the giant gorilla.
Named Godzilla.
Yeah. I look like Jeff Bridges, so you're not a little bit jumpy, King Kong.
You're right to kill King Kong.
Hail Ming. They find King Kong like dead and strapped on the hood of the tanker, and Jeff Bridges goes out there with his little blue ball and brings it back. Yeah, that would be fantastic.
But if you did that, you wouldn't have King Kong Lives, man,
I never saw it. It just looked like even that looked too terrible for me.
It's pretty bad.
The best thing about King Kong Lives is its cameo in The Big Hit.
The Big Hit. That's awesome. Yeah, because he rented the movie and he never returns it.
The guy keeps calling him. Oh, well, there's hello, little girl. No, I can't give you King Kong Lives because it's still in Melvin Smiley's house.
He owes $300 for late fees because he's kept it so long.
For all of you at home who don't know what we're talking about, Big Hit aside, there used to be places where you could rent movies, and this person rented one and never returned it. That was the plot line there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's hard to find those places in the wild anymore. I mean, aside from the Redbox is essentially the video store of a new generation,
right?
Depersonalized and
a lot less to pick from.
Because we're all kind of in the same area. There was a place in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and I can't think of the name of it now, but it was a little video store that was near the campus of Middle Tennessee State University. And it was a VHS rental place when I was going to college there. And it had like the guys behind the counter and stuff were incredible movie buffs.
Yeah.
And
it was called Video Culture.
That's right, Video Culture. And
I used to live a block away from it.
I did too. And well, I wasn't that close. I was probably about 4 blocks away. But anyway, yeah, but you could just go in and kind of rap with the guys for a second and be like, I'm kind of in the mood for something like Fulci's The Beyond. And they'd be like, oh, well, have you seen the House by the Cemetery? No, I have not, They're really cool. Really. I kind of miss that now. I think maybe podcasts have taken the place of that, of turning people on to obscure movies.
Right. Which is fine and dandy. I like that.
Okay, speaking of turning people on, the next reason you should watch Starman is the glowing-headed baby.
That turned you on?
Oh, yeah. So when Starman comes to our world and has the John Carpenter Halloween cam moment where he walks into the house like he's looking through a mask.
Right.
He finds a photo album and a lock of hair, uses that DNA, and starts to grow into Scott, the lost husband of our other main character. And as he does, you got some great practical effects of a being growing from infant to adult on the floor of this living room. Right. And it's really an amazing thing to throw in the middle of a love story that's also a sci-fi story. It's also an allegory to, government versus, the goodness of man. You're gonna scratch your head.
The thing about that is it is directly American Werewolf in London. That's what that scene is, without a doubt. Do you know the people that were behind that? Listen,
I do. Man.
Okay, you want to reveal it?
It's Dick Miller, Rick Baker, and Stan Winston.
Dick Smith, not Dick
Miller. Smith. Oh, Dick Miller was in a cameo during the production of the special effect. So it still counts, but yeah, you're right, Dick Smith.
Come on, man. The three biggest names in special effects: Dick Smith, Stan Winston, and Rick Baker. I mean, that's an effects person's dream. And they put that together, and it is. It's if you like American Werewolf in London, you're going to like this scene because it is pretty identical to it. It's just a baby turning into a man instead of, a man turning to a wolf. So you might could intersplice those. That might be pretty cool.
Like Werewolf Bar Mitzvah.
Spooky, scary.
Man
Boys becoming men. Men becoming wolves.
Wolf. Yeah.
So, being that you brought up that we're all in the same area, which is Tennessee, this movie was mainly shot in Tennessee. How about that? Manchester, Tennessee.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. I mean, it's great because it's such an out of the way place. You can film all kinds of stuff there, and nobody's going to bother you.
Yeah, I saw a Waffle House laid in, and I was like, "There's no way this is in Arizona. They don't have Waffle Houses anywhere outside the Mason-Dixon line or past Texas."
I love the fact too that in this scene, when the military shoots down his spaceship, and this huge explosion happens not far from her house, she doesn't wake up, but she wakes up when a blue light starts shining in her bed in the living room. It's just like, she must have really been hungover because that explosion was unbelievable.
Yeah, the first real scene that she's in when she discovers the Starman, she wakes up kind of inappropriately, but then turns around and just passes right the hell out again. So, right. She's conscious for about a minute and a half during the transformation, and then she's done.
Right. Which makes sense to me.
Yeah, it's definitely something you don't expect to see in your living room. It's only happened to me twice.
Wait, the transformation?
Yeah, the transformation of a star-based being into a human. I don't know how often it happens for you guys. I don't live in a big Starman infested area.
I don't either.
Gated community.
I mean, it would be nice to have them around though. They could probably fix stuff with those balls.
It may be happening at my house, but instead of people, they're just turning into donkeys because we keep having more and more donkeys pop up around. So
that's got to make a mess. One of my favorite moments from Jeff Bridges' acting point of view is just the look on his face when he has brought the deer back to life.
Right.
and laid out the guy who comes out to confront him, and the guy that he punched out, that guy's buddies are rushing towards him.
Yeah.
And it's a great shot where the camera is pushing on Jeff Bridges as he's approaching them.
Yeah.
And he's just got his hands out and kind of smiling,
like he's going to hug him or whatever.
I knocked out that mean guy. And then just gets the ever-living hell beat out of him.
And of course, the guy he knocks out is Ted White.
Yeah.
Jason from Part 4, I believe.
Yeah, my favorite of the Friday the 13th films.
You know what? That's up there for me, too.
Yeah, Bridges is amazing at it, though. Yeah, I mean, you're totally right. It's like, without his performance, this movie doesn't work, and he is incredible.
Plus, for all you sex fiends out there, you get to see Jeff Bridges play with his balls on the front porch.
That's accurate. Absolutely. There's a moment that's a bit of a tease, and I know that I'm speaking of sexual perverts. I'm going to sound like one, but keep in mind, like, I saw this movie originally when I was, preteen to, like entering puberty kind of thing. And there's a great scene with Karen Allen when they've got a motel room. Yeah. And she's talking to him, and she does this thing where she's about to take her top off.
Right.
And then it's like, oh, sorry, you just look so much like Scott. It seemed natural to do it. And you're just like, no, it's natural.
Keep going. I'm Scott.
Right. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of a hammy story in terms of, like, this is about an alien who comes to Earth and discovers the power of love.
Yep.
But without the performances to anchor it, like Jeff Bridges and the naivete he expresses, and kind of going back to my recommendation for why you should see it, there is this sense of just like overwhelming, like, yeah, there are times humanity can really get you down, but there's also a bravery and emotional solidity to being a human being that is unique to us, and that's one thing that this movie kind of goes out of its way to say, is that despite all our savagery, we're also capable of great beauty.
Right.
And I like that. I like that message in my movies, even if, as Carpenter said, that's not true. It's just what I wish were true.
Sure.
Well, in order to cleanse himself of Starman, he went and made They Live. So,
well, and They Live is the cynical version of this.
Right.
Yeah. Allow me to edify what I said. I wasn't saying that They Live expunges Starman because it was so bad. I'm saying if unrelenting optimism is what he was saying is an untrue situation, then They Live is definitely a remedy for that, because it's unrelenting pessimism all the way to the end.
Yeah, They Live is absolutely the anti-Starman of, here are aliens that are here to make sure that we continue to consume and just be, we're sheeple people. It's a great movie, though. Yep. It has an unnecessary wrestling scene, which makes it wonderful.
I think it's
let's take a minute to defend the movie by saying, it's hard to put it in a genre. When you sit down to watch it, you're probably not thinking, I really want to watch a romance, sci-fi, like on the road movie that's kind of like E.T. grown up.
Right.
Nobody really walks in, thinking that. So if they thought it was going to be a romance, they're going to be turned off by the practical effects and by some of the violence. If they thought it was going to be like E.T., they might be turned off by some of the adult content. If they think it's going to be an allegory to government control, they might be turned off by the optimism at the end. So it's one of those things where, because it's such a complete package, it makes it hard for you to get in the mindset of a particular kind of movie.
Carpenter is not just known for optimism, which he is most certainly not, but also just it being a love story at all. I think is something that's kind of contradictory to most of his films, other than, say, something like Memoirs of an Invisible Man. And the less you think about that, the better off you are.
I love Memoirs of an Invisible Man. I love it.
You're a crazy person.
I love it. It is so good.
I don't want to color your perception of the film. I will say that it did not hold up very well on a viewing for me.
Hey, valet park your high horse and get off of Chevy Chase. Be all right.
All right, so can we talk real quick about the unsung hero of this movie? Richard Jekyll.
Right.
Who, when last seen by me personally, was taking pot shots at a grizzly bear.
Exactly. Me and my wife were watching it, and I said, "That's the dude who gets killed by the grizzly." She's like, "I hated that guy."
He's kind of great in this, and I love the fact that Carpenter picks this kind of not always a B-movie character actor, but very much a character actor that's, famous for stuff like Magnificent Seven and, Grizzly. But he plays a great jerk in this,
right?
Almost to the point of being absurd. Of just like, nobody is this. Maybe they are, but it just comes across as like being so militaristic and like, yes, we are being greeted by an advanced alien civilization. We should probably kill it as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Are you talking about director George Fox? Is that who you're talking about?
Yes.
Yep.
I had to, I wrote down the director when they were just calling him that, and I was like, as soon as his name comes around, and then, I started thinking about his name being Fox and like the possible X-Files connection, but that might have been a stretch. It's just, the fact that his name was Fox and he was the government and he was the one that was trying to keep the aliens, as enemies. I just...
That's interesting.
That would make sense, though, if he were like Fox Mulder's father.
Yeah, George Fox. Fox Mulder.
And you're right, that's how naming works. And
boys becoming men becoming wolves.
But like that would make Fox Mulder real open to the idea of aliens and making contact and all that stuff, because he's rebelling against his father's very hardline military stance against aliens.
Wow. We just created a whole new theorem of Starman and X-Files. How about that, folks? Only here on the Ming Power Hour.
It's a bunch of crap is what it is.
You don't talk to guests like that.
They try not to let me talk to guests at all.
Yeah. Now I see why, Danny.
Look, but let's get back to this. People are listening to this and they're going to say, why do I watch Starman, right? So why do they watch Starman? I'm just going to go ahead and try and nail down some of the reasons so far. We've got, my first reason was Charles Martin Smith. Mark Sherman, the character, he brings it home to being the everyman who's involved, who brings humanity to the government machine. I've got the explosion budget, which I didn't mention particularly, but we did say how huge the explosion was when the craft hits Earth. It must have been an amazing explosion budget. So if you just like Terminator 2 and you just really want to see some explosions, check out Starman. It's pretty much the same movie.
Right.
I've got Werewolf Bar Mitzvah. I've got the practical effects where he grows from a baby to an adult. It's like something you haven't seen in a while. I've got striking performances, from Karen Allen and from Jeff Bridges particularly. They have to carry the movie because so much of it's about them on the road, and they both do a phenomenal job of bringing their acting chops and just creating this relationship between these people that are both under duress. One of them's under duress. The other one is lost and alone and not even human. And you believe it, which is what good actors do. 5, it's got optimism, and there isn't enough optimism in the world today. You watch this and you're thinking, oh, aliens and conspiracies, it must be all about doom and gloom. Well, it's not. It's about how things could go if the right people are in the right place at the right time. And then number 6, I'm throwing in there, you've got the director, George Fox. He's a character actor that Bo mentioned. He's going to say his name right after I'm done here because I didn't write it down and I didn't have it before. And he does a great job of bringing the other side. He's kind of the institution and he's kind of the enemy.
Richard Jekyll, like Richard Jackal with an E.
Okay, cool.
But that's his name. And I would say just as a whole, like you were saying earlier, it's all these different movies. It's kind of a sci-fi romance buddy road movie with heavy moralistic overtones.
Yep.
And I think it juggles all that stuff real well. And it's one of those movies that's just so good-hearted.
Right.
It's hard for me, at least, not to like. And I'm a bit of a sentimental guy. Like it's weird. I don't cry at funerals, but you put the right movie in front of me and, it's Niagara Falls, Frankie.
Wow.
Niagara Falls.
Yeah. So I have a real problem with that where, like, I don't understand your human emotions, but with movies, I'm a big sap. In this movie, like, I get choked up in this movie. The scene when he brings back the deer.
Right.
I have a real emotional response to that because I hate, as we said, we all live in Tennessee and you see a fair amount of that kind of thing. And
Yep.
I don't know. It does my heart good when I see the Starman bring a deer that's been shot by a hunter back to life and lets him go back to his woodland home.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I remember as a kid, one of the things I do remember about the movie, the things that are burned into my memory are him bringing that deer back to life. It is that Spielbergian, E.T. moment where this amazing thing happens to the degree that, there's a glow afterward, this creature that he doesn't understand why it was killed. He just brings it back to life.
Right. And it also, of course, sets up later when he does the same for Karen Allen. But
I was about to bring that up. To me, there's a turning point in this movie, not to spoil it, but when she gets shot, you hear the music cue, and it turns into a Carpenter film right there at that point. It really changes. That's where you get your typical kind of Carpenter feel of the movie. And that one just really stands out to me. And then he, basically, lays his balls on her and brings her back like they do in The Golden Child.
Golden Child. Hey, so, I just want to ask you guys about her getting killed. It's like there's a struggle over the pistol, and then the cops who are like just going to shoot into the car because that's what cops do.
Yeah.
Like she gets shot and it's like, boom, and she's dead. There's no writhing around. She gets hit in the side. Her side is covered with some blood, like she got shredded by some kind of thing. And she just dies right there. I thought that was really odd.
Well, I said, watch it again.
Do you want her to do the Reservoir Dogs? Like, I can't believe she shot me, Larry.
Yeah, I kind of do.
Give me one of your balls, Starman.
We should probably call them orbs from now on. It's entirely too much entendre.
I was talking about the later scene.
But yeah, you got the car crash scene where, again, he protects her. He walks through the flames carrying her, and she's protected. There's a lot of cool stuff in this movie.
Oh, I've got to throw out some love for the line. And this may fall under the umbrella of Charles Martin Smith being great in this movie. But his delivery of, he said greetings and melted his lug wrench.
Right. Yeah, I've got that
so
wrote
good.
down too. That's on my notes. Next thing I got on the list, we kind of said it a while ago, space baby.
Space baby. So Jenny, tells him, I can't have a baby. And he's like, well, why not? And she's like, I just can't. Some people can't. So it's established that it's a major void in her life. And he knows he has to leave. And she's explained love. So he's like, I want to give her something. And what does he give her?
Yeah, he gives her the old blue ball treatment, and gives her a baby. Like it's one of those things where they have their intimate moment together, which is actually a really nice scene. It's very sweet. And my favorite moment in that is when they're kind of kissing, and Jeff Bridges gets stuck in that loop of just kind of half opening his mouth, and she laughs at him. She's like, "You don't know how to do this. Sit back. Let a woman do the work." But when she comes to, though, and he's just kind of like sitting on the side of the train car as the landscape is rolling by, and he's just like, I have given you a baby, Jenny Hayden. And she's like, you did what?
Oh no, you didn't.
Right? Yeah. But in fairness, she's like, I told you I can't have babies. What are you, stupid for a Starman? And he's like, no, I promise you, and it is a boy baby. And I hope it's a masculine child. But yeah, it's one of those things that like all you have to do is nudge this moment slightly in one direction, and it becomes the creepiest thing you ever saw in a movie.
The Starman thing, he's got such a limited knowledge of humanity, but he learns so much. Yeah, it's a testimony to the fact that it's not just a romance; it's also a road movie.
Right.
At the beginning of the journey, they're both in places. She's in a place of duress. She's lost her. She's in despair, and he's lost, and he doesn't understand what's going on around him. So the two of them together, they not only have a physical journey through, like a car and another car in the back of a truck and boxcars and by foot, and they not only that, but they also have emotional journeys on the way. They learn a lot about everything they've got to, and she ends up stronger, and he ends up more knowledgeable of humanity.
Yeah, that's the big takeaway for me was, he talks about where he's from, how it's beautiful, everybody's the same, and what he takes away with it, which I think is great, is the beauty of individuality, because if we're not ourselves, and we keep pushing for more unity and everything being the same, but when you do that, you lose something. And I think that's a big thing that always stuck with me, is he talks about the beauty of individuality. And I've carried that for a long time. I don't want to be like somebody else. I want to be like me. My mom isn't so happy with that, but hey.
Yeah. I want to be like you. It's a great message. And again, one that you don't necessarily expect from John Carpenter, who is not known for doling out, uplifting human endorsement stories. And yeah, it's great. It's such a great message. It's communicated so well, and if maybe a little on the nose sometimes, but it's just so. It's one of those puppy dog movies. There are just so many things that it's doing to try to please me as a viewer. Right. From the performances to the theme to everything else, I fall for it. I'm totally dialed into Starman. When I watched it again for this show after, I don't know, I hadn't seen it in a while, but every time I watch it, man, I really adore this movie. I think it's so good-hearted and well-meaning, and like you said, you could use more of that in this old tired world.
It's like they said in Hardware Wars: you'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll kiss $3 goodbye. Not basketball or a peaceful world. I'm just going to give it one more breakdown because there are a couple of little things I want to throw in there. And so I'm going to say, define a little bit jumpy. I got to mention that he doesn't have a firm understanding of the language. So, when she says things where, she says them fast or whatever, he doesn't understand it and thinks it's a word. The word "little bit jumpy" comes up several times. He knows that it means she's under distress and he wants to make her comfortable. I also had Hit the Jack by Cadillac. That's always good. Yeah. Two more things, and then I'm done. One is the "take it easy, up yours" thing.
Right.
It happens twice where somebody said "take it easy," and then he says it to a guy in a bathroom, and the guy thinks he's looking at him, so he says "up yours," and then later "take it easy, up yours," and that gets him in trouble. I learned from this that if I ever meet somebody in like a souped up dune buggy, or if I meet people who are North Carolina fans, I can pretty much get them to do anything I can to help me. It's like, hey, I really need to get away from these cops. Can you take a cigarette machine and throw it down a flight of stairs? Sure, let's do it. And hey, I really need to get past these cops. Can you throw a bomb out in the thing and then take off in your dune buggy? Hey, no problem. There were some people that were really willing to bend over backwards just to help them out, and
they hate the cops.
And they were good country folks, except for the deer hunters. You can't trust them.
Right,
they're going to punch you in the gut.
All right, Bo. As far as rating, we just make up whatever. So,
all right, fair enough. Because I couldn't remember the scale on this show, and that's probably why.
Scale means nothing.
Scale.
Okay, if that's the case, I'm going to give Starman 5 blue Spaceballs out of 5.
5 out of 5 Spaceballs.
Did I take yours, Danny?
No. Well, I was. You know what? It's first come, first serve. You got it, buddy.
All right. I think it's a great movie. It's one of those movies that's good to you can kind of get away with watching this movie with your kids. It's not too extreme in terms of the language. You see a little, male buttocks, but and there's one very tame sex scene, but it's but fine. If your kid's upwards of 4 years old, they need to be learning that stuff anyway.
What better place than Starman?
And give them a pack of smokes and a scotch while you're watching it. But yeah, I think it's a fantastic movie. I think it's well acted. I think it's very fun. It's a great Sunday afternoon movie. If you're feeling kind of lazy and just want to watch something that's going to entertain you, but if you want to pay attention and watch it a little more actively, there's still stuff under the surface that you can mine out of it. But you can also just let this movie breeze on by because it's perfect for that too.
Right.
All right, I'm going to give it 10 military sidekicks with black berets that look like Lee Van Cleef.
Oh, that's good. I'm going to give it 15 rednecks with tire irons screaming, "Up yours."
Up yours. Perfect. That's a good score.
All right, we'll be right back.
And now it's time for church chat.
Well, well, well. Hello once again. I'm the church lady, and this is Church Chat. I'm here to do a little IMDb reading to make your naughty parts tingle. Today we're talking about the movie Starman, a 1984 film that's 1 hour 55 minutes. That's an adventure, action, and romance film directed by the great John Carpenter. Well, isn't that special? 32,666 people have seen this film. 666? Isn't that convenient? This movie stars Jeff Bridges, Karen Allen, and MC Gainey as cop number 2. I see that film school really paid off. In this movie, an alien takes the form of a young widow's husband and asks her to drive him from Wisconsin to Arizona. The government tries to stop them. Well, well, well. I know someone else that's a shapeshifter, changing forms that isn't quite Starman, but it does start with an S and end with an N. Could it be Satan?
All right, back for movie number 2. One of my all-time favorites. I made a huge mistake when Danny and I did our special about our favorite things, and I did not have this one in my top 10 list. It was a big mistake. This one is in my top 10, and I just totally ignored it, and I feel shameful about it. 1981's Excalibur. This movie is incredible. I love it.
I love this movie a lot. This is actually one of those movies. My mom is a big fan of high fantasy films. We took her to see all the Lord of the Rings movies in the theaters and Hobbit movies and all that stuff. She really loves that stuff. Game of Thrones just blows her mind.
Right.
But I only say that to say, like, when Excalibur came out, and particularly when it hit HBO, this is really where I encountered the movie, was when it played HBO about every 4.5 hours back in the early 80s. And I saw this movie a ton, and it was one of those movies that, even though it had a little Nipola in it, and was relatively violent, and there was some sexy time and stuff. Even though I was a kid, my mom was like, "No, it's fine. It's Excalibur. You're learning something probably." So, and
on HBO, it mattered what time of the day you caught it, because during the day they would show the PG version, and at night they would show the R-rated. They actually edited it to show it at different times.
Yeah, it's weird that the R-rated version is 20 minutes longer, something like that. I mean, it's substantially bigger.
Yeah.
Which is the only one to watch. It's so good. It's one of those movies that on paper sounds like a disaster waiting to happen, because you're retelling the Arthur legends. It's the director of Deliverance, and he was also done Zardoz. Ooh. So, his track record is, let's say, spotty.
Yep.
In terms of delivering on, epic kind of fantasy stories. But it's just filled with these classically trained actors. Like, it's a relative who's that of British actors, where you're like, hey, that's Jean-Luc Picard, and that's the guy from Taken. And then I don't know anybody else. Helen Mirren, I guess, is the other real big name.
Gabriel Byrne.
Gabriel Byrne, sure, is Uther.
He plays Uther.
Man.
I just read where Nigel Terry, who played King Arthur, when he died, he gave his entire fortune. It was like 1.4 million pounds. He gave it to 3 charities.
For children.
They were like armor for the children and swords for tots. And I think the third was magic for kindergarten readiness.
Right. Also, not sleeping with your sister support funds.
Just don't do it.
Yeah, don't do what Arthur did.
While we're on that subject, I just want to say Helen Mirren as
Right.
Morgan Le Fay, she looks incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's that like the cook, the thief, the wife, and her lover years of Helen Mirren when she is just the most smokinest thing, and she's an incredible actress as well. So
yeah, I mean, I'd take nothing away from her as an actress. I'm just saying, like, you know, being familiar with her as an older actress, where she still looks amazing. I mean, seeing her just last night when I rewatched this movie in her youth, I mean, she looks incredible.
And just like what Bo was saying too, this is a movie that started my infatuation with all of the medieval type movies or anything that even touched into that genre, Dragon Slayer, all this stuff. This movie was the start of that for me, where it really intrigued me. And so it was the start of all that for me.
That's kind of a bummer in a way, because it's really the best of the lot.
Right, exactly. And that's why this one's held up so high to me, because it doesn't get any better than this one.
I know I said this before we started the show, but this is one of the most rockinest movies.
Right.
Even though it's dealing with very classic storytelling and has these very dramatic British or Irish actors, UK actors.
Right.
Let's be Big Tent. And despite all that stuff, it is just metal. Like, the stuff that goes down in this movie is the best. You can have your Lord of the Rings, kids. I'll take my Excalibur and be perfectly happy.
You know what? I'm right there with you, man. I feel the same way. I think this movie is the standard that everybody is trying to reach to, and you know, it's not appreciated enough.
Well, let's take a moment for the fourth member of this crew here, the audience, and say, I just watched it, and although I missed the boat on some of it, I'm very familiar with a lot of the stories in it, and I had seen it. I'm not as huge a fanatic as Bo and Ricky, which is not a problem. But you need to watch it, because just like they're saying, not only does it take some tales that were made to be timeless, they were made to be dramatic. They have a lot of real visceral ideas in them, you know, such as incest, such as violence, such as, you know, stealing the crown, stealing someone's wife, having babies out of wedlock when it wasn't an okay thing. As a matter of fact, it was something that could get you killed. Loyalty and magic and fate and the once and future king. They're all involved, and they're all told in this story. And that's why it's so long. And that's why it ranges. And by the end of it, it almost has like a space epic feel. You know, everything in it is disjointed and kind of frightening, because they're starting to get into the mists of Avalon. They're starting to get into where, and they start out this way, but they also maintain it throughout, that there's a realism and there's a fantasy, and the line between is fudged the whole way through.
You kind of center all the magic stuff around Merlin and then later Morgana. But, you know, Merlin says multiple times through the course of the film, like, the age of magic is kind of winding down. And this is, you know, we're entering the age of men. And that's a very, you know, Lord of the Rings idea, that the idea of Arthur understanding his role as king, which costs him dearly on a personal level. Surly, drunken Liam Neeson accusing her of having an affair with Lancelot, which ironically isn't true until he accuses her of it. But
that's the irony.
The scene where he's where Arthur and, you know, Guinevere is saying, like, you have to be my champion in this situation, and Arthur's like, I can't. I mean, the laws are the law, and I'm the king. I have to judge this, and if the laws don't apply to me, then they don't apply to anybody.
Right.
And that is purely Arthurian.
It's just, like, his character is legitimately fantastic in this movie, where he goes from being the squire, you know, who removes the sword and immediately hands it away. You know, he is the best of what humans can be. And even when he makes mistakes, he immediately understands the mistake he made. Like when he and Lancelot are fighting, I know I'm jumping all over the place, but he ends up calling on the power of Excalibur to defeat Lancelot, which then breaks the sword. And, you know, Merlin is there to be all creepy and wonderful. He's like, you have broken what could not be broken. And immediately Arthur is like, it was my own pride and vanity. Like I called upon the power of this sword that has been wielded by my ancestors and in theory, kings to come. And because of my own pride, I've destroyed that. And I'm not worthy to wield this sword. Right. And because he recognizes that, the Lady of the Lake, that watery tart, shows up to give him a repaired Excalibur. And you're like, that is awesome.
And then the face that Merlin makes after he gets the sword back is the relief that he has. He's like, man, we just about blew that one.
Can we start with Merlin? How amazing Nicol Williamson is as Merlin.
You're right. You watch Merlin. He brings all the entertainment. He brings the great quote at the right time. His acting is spot on. Like he's such a man out of his time. You know, when he comes in, it's like he's observing everything. Like, this is beautiful, but it's something that I'm not really a part of. It's something I'm just watching. If you are out there and you've never watched Excalibur, it's going to be overwhelming. And look to Merlin for your guidance.
Yeah, he's kind of the moral center of the movie, really, as well. I mean, even though Arthur is certainly trying to do the right thing and be the king that he is fated to be. But it's Merlin who takes him away from Uther because he would probably grow up and be a real jerk if, Uther had raised him.
In my notes, I've got Uther is a piece of trash.
Yeah, he really, like, the fact that Merlin and Uther is, of course, Arthur's father, and Arthur is the product of this adulterous relationship that, thanks to Merlin, Uther gets to have with the wife of his enemy. But they're not enemies originally. Like, originally, Uther's got Excalibur, and we're trying to unite Britain into one kingdom, and there's, an opponent and who's willing to concede some, and it's Merlin who's got to be like, Uther, the guy is trying to meet you halfway here. How about you not be a jerk and we stop all this fighting? Right. And then immediately, as soon as they're friends and are having dinner, and the enemy then is like, hey, my wife's going to come out and dance for us, Uther is just like, I'm going to have sex with her. I don't care what it takes. It is going down. And Merlin's like, are you sure you're going to risk everything in doing this? Oh, I'm sure. And so Merlin calls the dragon breath, and, and Uther has his way with his enemy's wife, which produces Arthur. But it's just like, you are the worst king ever. Like, you were sacrificing the piece of your kingdom for a piece.
The weird piece of cinema history of that, too, is Igraine is actually John Boorman's daughter.
I thought it was his wife. Oh, my God. His daughter is creepier.
I believe that's correct. I believe it's one of his daughters.
The Asia Argento syndrome.
Hey, something we forgot to do for the folks that haven't seen this movie. I invited somebody else to do a synopsis for us, and they couldn't get it done in time. So in its place, we got a real crappy Mr. T.
Hey, fool. Gonna tell you about Excalibur. 1981. Merlin the Magician helps Arthur unite the Britons around the round table of Camelot, fool. Even as forces conspire to tear it apart. The metascore for this movie is pain.
He really likes the word fool.
Yeah, I noticed that too. That that was one of the more aggressive Mr. T outings, I think.
Oh, wait a minute. I do have something here. Hold on. He just sent it to me. Hold on. Let's look.
Hi, Ricky. Hi, Danny. This is Duncan from the podcast Under the Stairs. And what I wanted to do just now is record a short message thanking you very much for the opportunity to guest on your show last week. It was my first time on Ming Power Hour, and I can say that it was one of my favourite recordings I've ever done as a guest on anyone else's show. And it was so much fun finally getting a chance to discuss Outland and Highlander on a podcast. What's this? It's an email from Ricky. Hi Duncan, thanks very much for appearing on the Hail Ming Power. Ricky, this is so weird, I'm just recording this message to you just now. Thanks very much for appearing on the Hail Ming Power Hour. It was a blast having you on. I was wondering if you could record a synopsis for one of the movies on next week's show. Our special guest will be none other than Bo Ransdell. Bane of my existence, Bo Ransdell. My colleague over on Duncan and Bo come correct. Mr. Perfect Hair, Mr. Bo Ransdell. Mr. Smooth Voice, Mr. Bo Ransdell. Mr. Schadenfreude Gaming, Bo Ransdell, with his perfect arguments and his I wrote a movie and read my books, Mr. Bo Ransdell. I'm only joking. I hate the guy. I actually hate the guy. I hate you, Bo Ransdell. Well, what's the synopsis here? Oh, trust you. Excalibur from 1981, a movie that I love. That's fantastic. Trust you, Bo, to pick that. Oh, I don't know why I do these things, especially. This is for you, Ricky, and this is not for Bo. Screw you, Bo. The movie was directed by John Boorman, and it stars Nigel Terry, Helen Mirren, Nicholas Clay, and other folks. The synopsis: Merlin the Magician helps Arthur Pendragon unite the Britons around the round table of Camelot, even though forces conspire to tear it apart. I wish I could wish this review to suck, but I know Bo's on it, so it won't, and I wouldn't wish a bad show for Danny and Ricky. This is a catch-22. And on that, I'm out of here. I hate you, Bo Ransdell. I hate you.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. The funny thing is, he means all of that. Like, the stuff that he sends to my home. At first, it was just dead animals. And now, like, I've been swatted a few times. I feel like that's largely Duncan, because when I ask, like, who called this in? They're like, we couldn't understand him. It sounded like somebody who had some form of stroke. So, yeah, I understand. I don't, like... From what I understood of that introduction, he had a great time on the show and wishes me well. That's all I understood. The rest was pops and buzzes.
Hail Ming.
Right.
What have I gotten into?
right. Yeah, this is a conflagration that is going to cost literally billions of dollars and millions of lives at the end of the day.
Because we're talking about Excalibur, and this movie is a fantastic rendition of all that. The more it sets in my mind this morning, the more what I saw last night is so much more epic. It's so much bigger. Because while you're watching it, it's a lot to take in, but the more it sets in your mind, the more you start to think about what happened. And I think that's something that you should realize. Don't turn it off because it's starting to overwhelm you. Just let it set. Think about it later. The other thing I wanted to do is just give a shout out to the Merlin series that came out on Channel 2. It was like a made-for-TV miniseries. It also tells a lot of these same stories, and I'm not going to say it's in the same category, but it is an excellent Arthurian story as well. And I don't think anybody ever talks about it. And we probably won't do a thing about it. We might when we do like G versus E or something. But
sure,
like I just want to say also like Sam Neill plays Merlin. It's a really fun watch.
Yeah, I'll give it a shot. I like this character a lot, and and Sam Neill I like a lot as well. He's my favorite Damien. Dinosaur Hunting Antichrist. That's the movie we should make with Sam Neill.
As far as reason to watch the movie, make it so, sword. When Picard goes to pull the sword out, and the whole ceremony there, and you can tell he's putting an effort into it, man. Yeah,
okay. Patrick Stewart, a minute ago I said that Helen Mirren is a good-looking woman. Well, I want to be equal opportunity and say Patrick Stewart looks great in this. Liam Neeson, not quite so much. He's a little scraggly, but he was pretty young. You give him some credit. Patrick Stewart looks great. He's always such a force on the screen. Right. I'd do him. Anyway, I want to get into that scene too, because first of all, the lance that's going on, the tournament, it's like just a bunch of people on horses like playing grab ass in a field. They're like bopping each other.
It's medieval grab ass. Yeah,
it is. It's just like they're all like kind of bopping each other, and they fall off the horse. Nothing. It's not like the lance. It's not like the jousting you see later in the movie and in usual tournaments that you see in medieval films. They're just kind of riding around, and then finally, I guess they decide. Well, I guess
I remember my first joust. It looks far worse than it feels.
Yeah. Kay says that to or Kay's father.
Yeah, it says to Kay. Yeah.
Loden Grange. So Leoden Grange is Patrick Stewart's character, and he goes over to pull the sword. And I love all those, just like in The Sword and the Stone, the Disney one. Everybody's pulling on the sword. Well, just put your back into it. Everybody wants that sword, and it becomes such a great center point for drama. And he puts that thing on his forehead, and he hunkers down, and then he just fails to get it. And it's just, well, I thought it was me, I thought I was going to do it. At the culmination of that whole thing, when Arthur does go pull the stone or the sword from the stone, and everyone comes around and they say, "Oh, boy, King, I'm not going to follow him." They put it back, and they still can't pull it.
Let the boy try.
Well, Loden Grange stands up and he says, "I'll follow him."
Right.
You know, but the guy says, "Who's going to follow that boy? Nobody's going to follow that boy." And he starts rallying everybody. And he looks at him. He's, "Will you stand with him or with us?" And he's, "I stand with him."
Yeah.
And they immediately declare war on him. They start to siege his castle. And Arthur goes off with Merlin and has a moment that I have to say it's an awful lot like
Dagobah.
Empire Strikes Back.
Yep, Dagobah.
It's a lot like, I mean, they came out they were in production at the same time. So I don't think either one of them pulled from each other. But Merlin and Arthur, you know, they have lizards and snakes like making them jump. It's the same like breakdown, which always makes the Yoda parts of the original trilogy my favorites. But then you know, he's like, "Well, we have to go. We're coming over the hill, and by the way, these are the people loyal to you. They're right here. Let's go fight." And they go to take Lodengrage's castle, and you know, much like Uther, you know, it was sieging for the woman. Well, Arthur sieges to help his supporter, and then at the end, you know, his daughter becomes his love.
I've got in my notes that Merlin walks like Jason Voorhees because he turns around and he's like 100 yards away instantly.
Yeah.
It's like, holy crap.
Well, another thing I love from this, you know, and this falls to the beauty of the Arthurian legends and the stories, is that, you know, what does he do when he encounters the man that was telling everybody not to follow him? He gives him Excalibur.
Yeah.
He says, here's Excalibur. This is what made the decision, not me.
Right.
And strike me down if you want. And the guy goes to strike him down and can't do it and ends up knighting him so that he will be his equal and he can follow him as king. It's the difference between Uther and Arthur. You know, Uther took what he wanted. Uther was all about himself. Arthur's all about the others. He's a just king.
And Merlin's reaction in that moment is great too, where he's like, he's surprised, genuinely surprised by it, of like, what is this?
Right.
You know?
Another thing to watch out right before that scene is Merlin the Horse Whisperer.
Yeah.
He just walks up, latches the rope to it to pull down this thing that they built, you know, to climb up, and he just whispers in the horse ear and he takes off.
Yeah, and they pull it down and, we're trying to siege this castle. And then they all die.
Yeah, and King Arthur's hopping around the castle walls like a monkey, and
Stevie Nicks is watching him.
Yeah.
And then she goes, "Father, look!" And he's like, this guy's like beaten, trying to kill him. And he's, "Father, look!" He's like,
a little busy here, honey.
Yeah, and Guinevere's beautiful there. It just all natural. Later, when she becomes queen, gets the eye makeup. I wasn't as impressed. But Patrick Stewart was still there, so it was
absolutely.
Okay.
Another thing that is absolutely completely rocking about this movie is Old Man Lancelot. He is pledged to the king because he finally found a leader who could best him in battle, and he has declared his, you know, given up his lands and his title and everything just to serve this king. The downside is he's got the hots for his king's wife.
Right.
And is doing his level best not to give in to it, to the point where people are like, "Where are you all the time, Lancelot? You come into town, you drop off Percival here, and we send him to the kitchen, and then you're gone again, you know, off to the woods." And then, you know, when they finally consummate this illicit affair and Arthur finds them and drives Excalibur between them, which is awesome. A king without a sword, a land without a king. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
And then Lancelot just disappears. Like, he goes away.
As he should.
Because he is shamed. But when we next see him in the movie, he's just this wild-haired crazy guy. And the next time we see him in battle, because, you know, the whole deal with Lancelot is not only is he trying to be, you know, the most chivalrous of knights and the best of knights, but that he's also incredible in battle. There's no equal to him.
Yeah.
And we see him as this crazy old homeless person tossing around a big spiky stick and just laying waste. And it is fantastic. Yeah. Like, it's if a normal person had a baby with a bear, and that bear baby grew up to wield weapons. And that's Lancelot in the last scene of this movie. It's so good.
I expect him to say, "Steggo, crawl," because he looks like Yellowbeard.
Yellowbeard. I always have a pet peeve with Lancelot. I mean, even to the fact that when he's exiled himself because of his conduct, he's still leading all those people against the knights because of how they've, you know, let everyone down. He's proselytizing. That's so Lancelot. It's like, even though I'm not good enough and I give all this stuff away, I'm still going to tell other people what to do. I've always had beef with Lancelot, and I always will.
Yeah.
I always saw that as Lancelot externalizing his self-hatred, that he was leading people against the knights because he didn't have the courage to be the knight he wanted to be.
Well, sure. I mean, but he's still, I think the thing is he's a natural born leader. So he can't help but to have people flock to him. And that might be his greatest enemy. He still needs to step off, though, because he's not as good as he thinks he is, and he never will be.
He thinks he's hot snot, but he's really cold boogers on a paper plate. Is that the thrust of the argument?
Yeah, that's about it.
Wow.
All right.
Another thing to look for in this movie, this is one pimped out wedding, man, that they have.
Oh, it's
extraordinary.
gorgeous.
Yeah.
So
I love all the banners. It's like, is it indoors? Is it outdoors? It doesn't matter.
It's beautiful. Awesome. And that's the thing about this movie. We haven't said it enough, but man, this movie is beautiful. The way it's shot, the way everything shines. They did a great job showing the contrast of, the wealth of the land versus when it's a wasteland. The movie is absolutely beautiful.
Oh, for sure. It definitely uses the landscape well, but I mean, John Boorman doesn't have a problem framing a shot or highlighting the beauty. There's that great scene where, and this is again towards the end of the movie, but when Percival tosses Excalibur to the Lady of the Lake, of just how striking that image is of the slightly off-center arm extending from the water, holding the sword, and then suddenly it submerges. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, it's amazing. I've always loved the shot of Lancelot fighting himself,
Oh, sure.
And,
still wound, my lord.
And that shot, I've watched that over and over of how they pulled off the sword going through the side, because you see the little piece that's behind him. And, man, and to hear John Boorman talk about it, simple effect, but it looks absolutely incredible. It's a great effect.
You're right. It looks great. I watched it last night and I said, man, I don't know how they did that effect, but I'm just willing to believe they just stabbed him.
Yeah, because that's the way it looks.
I'm pretty sure that happened, yeah.
He was Irish.
They can handle it.
Go ahead and stab me, you wee fatty. Sorry,
I think it would be more like, go ahead and stab me in my Lucky Charms.
Yeah. Hoi-toy-toy-toy.
Again, I'm sorry for all of our UK listeners. I appreciate you and your ethnic diversity and do not wish to insult your accents in any way, shape, or form.
And my animosity is really just limited to one Scotsman. It's a blood feud.
I want to point out early in the movie, it moves so fast and it covers so much ground. I think we missed this, but I have in my notes and I just want to run through them real quick. Uther is saying talk is for lovers. Uther is a great mixed character to start the thing off with. They need somebody to be king and he's the guy, but he's not the guy to bring it home. And Merlin sees the long game. He's got to get somebody in charge so they get the right person in charge. But until somebody's in charge, it's not going to go anywhere. I also want to say, while he is disguised as Igraine's husband, Cornwall's been lured out and he gets killed. And this scene, for any horror fans out there saying Excalibur, it's not for me.
Shoot.
Cornwall falls off his horse onto this big spiked, I don't even know what it is. It's like a big dome covered in spikes, and they all stab straight through his plate mail.
Yeah.
While his wife is getting ravaged by his enemy.
Man,
that right there is some brutal stuff. I spit on your grave. Well, check this out. I mean, come on down.
Well, and when he cuts dude's arm with the Excalibur, it's showing you the strength of Excalibur. But that's one of the first time I've ever seen somebody get an arm cut off.
Yeah, just hacked.
And you see all through this movie, man, there's some carnage going on. And also the other horror thing is when Percival's hanging up in the tree.
Oh, the tree.
And, maybe it's not when he's hanging up, but there's bodies hanging from the tree that's been hung there for a long time, and you see the bird pecking the eye out of the other body that's up there. It's pretty gross.
Yeah, when Mordred shows up in his golden baby costume.
Yeah.
And takes him past the tree, and he says, they weren't worthy.
Right.
There's an extended scene of a crow pecking this guy's soft parts out of his face skull.
Yeah.
Face skull.
Kind of have to.
It's the name of my band.
Face skull.
For you playing at home, Mordred is the son of Arthur and his sister, Ew.
And it's like, I have given you a son, my king, my brother. That's right.
It's gross.
It is, and again, this all takes place relatively quickly. Like a lot of this stuff does. A lot of the movie is kind of this rush to set up the big set pieces that
You're saying because she's on top of him, then bada boom, bada bing. Next thing you know, she's having the baby, and
Morgan Le Fay or Morgana, depending on how you want to name her from the history or from the legend. Pardon me. I mean, you got to say that she's bad for not only first of all, she sees right through Uther. She sees right through his disguise when he ravages her mom, because that's where Morgan came from. She was the half sister of Arthur, because she was Igraine and Cornwall's daughter. But also, when she has her own baby, and who pulls that baby out? She pulls that baby out.
Right.
The baby's coming out. She grabs it and pulls it out, and then she's like, "Oh, I'm glad you're here."
She's a real do-it-yourselfer, and I respect that.
Well, people were tougher back then,
Sure. Yeah, she's a fun character because she's also, Guinevere's best friend. She's the one kind of whispering to
Liam Neeson.
Gowan to like, hey, I think maybe something's going on between Lancelot and Guinevere. But yeah, it's and her Morgana's big thrust is, I want to learn what Merlin knows. And then once I know that, I'm going to crawdad him and basically kill him for all intents and purposes. So freeze him away in his secret spine of the dragon cave.
Right.
And then raise my anti-Arthur baby, Mordred. And then, he's going to be the next king. It's a good plan. Like everything she does in the movie is geared towards that of bringing Arthur down. And she makes a nice villainess, but there's also this undercurrent of, yes, she has this motive of like creating the son that's going to be the king and all that. But underneath all of that is her desire for all this secret knowledge too.
Right.
That, that's ultimately kind of her undoing, is just wanting to know. Look into the eyes of the dragon in despair. Oh, it's so good.
It's awesome. And poor King Arthur, man, at this point, this dude, he's gone from top of the hill to he's hit rock bottom, man. Dude's lost his wife to his best friend. He's had sex with his sister, and he gets struck by lightning. This dude could be writing country songs at this point.
Yeah, another scene that I remember from my childhood is Arthur being struck by lightning.
Yeah,
because it could be on a space station, it could be in a cathedral. There's this neon cross, and they're all praying at it, and and he's just had incestuous sex with his sister, his half sister, unknowingly, because she cast glamour over herself. He's saying, guide us, and what happens? He gets struck by lightning and falls ill right there. And I think the problem with telling this movie as we're doing is that it is a collection of stories, and it almost could be done like an anthology. So you want to tell your favorite parts of every story, and you get lost because it spans so much time. I just want to, I'm just out there talking to the people who are listening, because we're talking about our favorite scenes, and they're all in there, and they all tie together, but you got to sit through it, because it's something that you're going to enjoy later as you think about how all the elements tied together at the end.
And Bo said it earlier, when all this turns back around and life starts coming back to the land, it's just one of those cinematic scenes that just stays in my head forever. It's just perfect.
So that music is actually, Carl Orff's Carmina Burana, which you've heard in a bunch of other stuff. But my first encounter with the music was in this. And they use it a couple of times, but the most effective is when, Percival, who just can't do anything right the first time.
Right.
Like, there are two different instances in this movie. Another reason you should watch it is just for Percival almost doing something, then screwing it up, and then going back and doing it right the second time. Happens twice. But once Percival's gone to retrieve the Holy Grail, which is a cool set of scenes as well.
Right.
My favorite being when he finds the knight kneeling in prayer at the top of the snowy peak.
Right.
And when he puts a hand on his shoulder, we realize, oh, this is just a dude who died
right.
Along the way. And Percival's one of the last of the quest knights. But yeah, so he gets the Holy Grail, gives it to Arthur, and Arthur, comes back to life. And we learn the secret of the Grail and of Arthur, which is that the king is the land and the land is the king. And another theme that runs throughout this movie. And yeah, that scene of like Carmina Burana playing, the knights riding again, the land blooming behind them as they ride through it. It's phenomenal. That's really a great piece of filmmaking.
Yeah.
But in addition to all the, like, Merlin's great, Arthur's a great character, Morgana's a great character, all that stuff, let's talk about what a real piece of crap Mordred is from jump. Like, I hate this kid from the first time you see him.
Creepy,
when he's
man.
Sweet.
Yeah. When you first see Mordred, as other than as just a baby, he's wearing this golden armor that looks like a child. It's got like a baby face on top of it. It's got these little chubby baby pectoral muscles. Little chubby belly. And I think that's done intentionally to make you. He's been preened just to be king and nothing else, and he's been given everything, and it's gold, and that's who he is. He's going to. He knows his destiny is to become the next king, and he's not going to have to work to get it. And yeah, he's slimy too.
Yeah.
To the point where she's anointing him with the oils and she's rubbing the oils into his skin. I mean, there's nothing about that brings any kind of, it's not motherly.
Right.
It's not loving. It's just kind of awkward.
Yep. Very much.
Well, and we've already learned that Morgana plays a little fast and loose with, who she might feel some attraction towards, or at least who she might use for sexual purposes. When he finally, like on the back end of that incredible scene between Merlin and Morgana in her tent the day before the final battle, when he's given her the whole, like, speak the words of the charm of making, and it's much better than I ever was, all that stuff, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, because he's a nightmare, right? He's a nightmare to others, and then he goes right there and he takes out Morgana.
Yeah,
right there.
But when the little crappy Mordred shows up, and he's a grown man by this point, or young man, shows up in her tent to figure out why all of a sudden this fog has rolled in, which is going to hinder them in battle, and she pulls a shining on him,
right?
Where the charm of making has aged her until she's this old crone. And Mordred just chokes her out.
Yeah.
like you are a terrible kid.
Yeah.
That's your mother.
Granted,
not the best home life, but come on, man, you don't choke your mom. But yeah, it's like their relationship is great. But Mordred just as a villain is fantastic. Like when we get to the end of the movie and he does the, come father, let us embrace.
Right.
And shoves the spear into him. And then Arthur does the most baller thing that's ever happened in film history, where he just drags himself along the shaft of the spear and drives Excalibur into his son's chest. It's, oh man, I mean, it's that kind of epic storytelling of, when you mentioned Empire earlier, but it is that level of storytelling of just these grand epic stories that seem much larger than the film itself.
Right.
In a weird way. It's so good.
Yeah. That fight scene at the end is just incredible.
I'm just going to, to tie us up here. I mean, we've been all over the place, but I'm going to give us some reasons to watch the movie. First of all, it's high fantasy. It is high fantasy. And nowadays you don't get a lot of that. It's high fantasy because it's these retold stories that are, are centuries old now. The Irish location, the Irish crew and actors, there are a lot of really great actors in there that if they didn't get their start, it definitely was all around the beginning. It's got it that it skirts the line between fantasy and reality. Get into the story. You got Uther and you got Merlin. Merlin puts Uther in power because it's a necessary evil. You got Arthur and you got Merlin. Arthur comes to power because he's the necessary good. You got Morgana because she represents the old ways trying to come back. She represents the evils come back to haunt you. And she does a great job coming into the story and shaking things up when it has to be. You've got the Lancelot, Arthur, and Guinevere triangle, which has been done ad nauseum. But one thing I like about this is, although it's there and it's important, it doesn't derail the whole story. It just pushes the story to its necessary end. You've got the incestuous relationship between Morgana and Arthur, which also pushes the story to its end. Arthur is still good in this. You've got an epic battle for the end of it. You've got the Grail quest, which has all kinds of horrific scenes of desolation where the knights are on a quest for their king. And I'm having a hard time, but I want to end it out, other than the ship to Avalon that takes Arthur away,
Right.
Spoiler alert. I want to end it with this quote from Bo. Come on, man. You don't choke your mama.
Yeah. If we can all come together and with one simple idea as a species, it's you don't murder your mother with your bare hands.
That's right.
Yeah.
Don't choke her out.
No, you drop a log on her like Remo Williams
Yeah.
would do.
Right. Or, push her out of a train. I mean, whatever you get, don't choke her. That indicates a level of anger that you just shouldn't entertain in your life.
That's rude, dude.
Don't do crack. Don't do crack. It's a ghetto drug.
It's our public service announcement from Hell Ming Power Hour. Don't choke your mom.
The more you know. Like everything about this movie, like we're skipping over all kinds of stuff because it's an almost 2.5 hour movie.
Right.
That has awesomeness at every turn.
Yep.
When Merlin is giving Morgana the speech about like what is in his lair, it's
right.
Power and despair and knowledge and oblivion and all this stuff. And it's all that's great. The stuff I really like the stuff with Arthur just kind of leaning on Merlin to give him some advice, and is most uncomfortable when he gets a straight answer.
Right.
Like that's not Merlin's game. So when he's like, "Will I ever have a son?" and Merlin's just like, "Yes, you will." And it's like, oh, that's not good. If he's not, putting his little Merlin spin on things, that means there's some dark stuff is about to go down. Some dark business is afoot. Yeah. And the first time you see it, because there are so many stories kind of happening all at once and so many characters and that kind of thing, it's a movie that I would compare it to The Godfather in this sense of the first time you watch it, just let it wash over you and enjoy the movie for what it is. Don't worry about people's relationships to each other or, where does this guy come from? Where does this guy fit in? Just watch it to appreciate the filmmaking at work.
Right.
And then your subsequent viewings, you can get into the like, oh, that's right. Kay is Arthur's, kind of adoptive brother. And he's with him, up to and including the scene where, Arthur drinks from the Grail and kind of is rejuvenated. And it's Kay that's right there with him.
And even watching that, it takes you out to notice that, the Grail is kind of empty when he's walking, and it starts filling up automatically while he's walking over there. So it's all these little subtle things that the multiple viewings, you start seeing these things like, wow, that's really cool. I totally agree with Bo. I think first time through, you just are amazed by the cinematography of the whole thing. And the more you watch it, you start picking up these things, and it has more depth to it. It's incredible.
And it's all written, it was written to incorporate the idea of the king and also the idea of religion to those who might not have had the same religion. And Merlin's a guide there. Also, the drinking from the cup, the blood.
Right.
That's all there. And I'm not going to hammer that home because that's not what we do. You have to listen to Kiss the Goat for that. But I'm going to say this, I've always loved Arthur in the same way I love Luke Skywalker. As
Right.
weird as that sounds.
Right.
But I ran in this quote and I had to write it down where he comes back after drinking from the cup. And I'm just going to say the end of this quote where he says, I have lived through others too long. Lancelot carried my honor, Guinevere my guilt, Mordred bears my sins. My knights have fought my causes. Now, my brother, I shall be king. And in that way, he's saying, don't blame women for all sin. Don't blame the bastard child for your wrongdoings. Don't blame women for all your guilt. He's taking all that on himself. And again, it's a very religious comment. He's saying, you shouldn't let others bear all your burden. You should let me bear all your burden. Yep. And again, it's a very religious point. I'm not getting into that. We could talk about that in a different time. But it is a great way to tie all these stories together And it's just a fantastic and rich system of legends.
Yep.
And thank you so much. Thanks for giving me time to talk. I know I can ramble.
No, there's a scene that follows that one even that I think is like the scene that you're talking about, which kind of deifies Arthur in a lot of ways. And then we have a scene almost, the following scene when he goes to Guinevere, who is in a nunnery. He forgives her for the affair and asks for her forgiveness. And there's this great human moment where he says, there are times I wish I could have just been a man instead of a king.
Yeah.
And I wondered then if I would have been the kind of husband that you deserved. He has this kind of wistful moment as he's leaving. And he says, sometimes I dream of that, and then walks out.
Yeah.
And it's a great moment because you understand that the weight that he carries makes him unable to have the life of a normal man. And he's all the more heroic for it, the sacrifice he's made so that he can be this thing that people need.
Right.
It's,
and
this movie's
then he
good.
goes on to some kind of space fight in Eternia that you would see on He-Man.
Sure. As you do. The one thing I will say about this movie is it suffers from the time it was made in that you didn't have the big cinematic battle sequences of Braveheart, Duncan's movie of choice. Something like that where it's taking the time to be truly brutal in its depiction of the battles. I mean, there's still some fairly bloody stuff going on here, but it's not, you're not seeing limbs rended, and legs chopped off all the time in this film, although, it does happen on occasion, but it's not like those battle scenes aren't about that.
Right.
It's pretty brutal though. Like it's pretty brutal. And just because the scale of the battles aren't as huge doesn't mean that what you see, I mean, one of the things that medieval movies that have brutal fight scenes, I've always noticed, is somebody's getting drowned in a muddy pool. Like, when you have a fight scene and somebody gets knocked into a muddy pool and somebody else is just trying to drown them, that brings that visceral, like, you're drowning, you're choking, you're holding someone down until they lose their air. You're not swiping them dead with one stroke.
Right.
And I do think that it is very brutal. It shows in many places just how awful the situation is for mankind.
Yeah.
And how much they need that guiding light, like Starman.
Sure. If the Starman probably visited back then and was like, you know what, Arthur's got it. I'm good.
Yeah,
I'll be back when Karen Allen's born.
He's like, hey, Morgana, you want a baby? I can put one in you. And she's like, I got it covered.
Yeah, right.
How about I can put one over in that yak?
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. No.
Oh, come on, man.
No. We're not talking about that movie right now. That has its own episode.
All right, cool. Let's give this thing a rating, man. I mean, obviously, as much as we goo-gooed and gaga'd about it, it's a high movie on my list, without a doubt. I give it 20 Yellowbeards kicking butt in the dragon's breath.
I will give it 5 out of 5 Lancelot becomes Sasquatches.
Oh, that's good.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, I wish I had thought of that one.
That's what happens when you don't go first.
Yeah. I'm going to give this a 10 Dothrak Nienves out of 10.
Ooh.
Because the charm of making is like, it's one of those things that's mentioned a lot through the movie. And it's just this general idea of like, that's magic. The charm of making is magic.
Right. It's like in The Last Unicorn where he says, magic, do as you will. It's the most dangerous kind of magic because it's just letting magic in. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. So good. Oh, God, that scene where Morgana just writhing on the bed doing the charm of making is...
The smoke's coming out of her mouth and it just keeps filling the room. Oh, yeah.
It's awesome.
It's both awesome and weirdly sexy, and also like you understand that Merlin is getting his revenge finally. Oh, it's so good. God, this movie's good.
I wish that I wasn't looking so closely because you can see the smoke pouring out of like the spot next to her mouth.
Right.
It doesn't, I don't mind seeing how special effects are done, but it was a little distracting because it went on for so long.
Right. Yeah, they focused a little too much, and you can you start figuring that one out. And that's why the sword through Lancelot works so well because it's just a one-time 2-second little shot. So
yeah. Okay, I didn't want to know. I still don't want to know. Don't tell me how they did it. Don't tell me. I don't want to know.
I still don't understand it. And I heard John Boorman talking about it, and I still say, I don't really understand how you pulled that off. So
it's like that scene from Cannibal Holocaust. Now, I know how that one's done, so I'll never be able to see it and not know.
At least you know how the one in Zombie Holocaust happens, where they just throw the dummy down the stairwell and the arm pops off.
That can happen with zombies. That's something they live with every day.
I saw a movie called Chinese Super Gang once, where a guy smashed a dude's head, and then they just clipped to a watermelon that had been painted black, and they smashed the watermelon. I'm not sure how they did that.
All right, we'll be right back.
Looking for something different in your podcast library? Then why not check out the Podcast Under the Stairs? I'm the host, Duncan McLeish, and joining me each week will be a special guest as we examine some classic, old-school horror favourites, as well as some modern classics. That's not to say that we don't tackle some of the, let's say, more questionable entries into the horror genre. And if all that wasn't enough, we have a subset of shows called Baz v Horror, where our horror novice, the Baz, tackles horror in all shapes and forms to see who will come out victorious. So what are you waiting for? The show can be found at podcastunderthestairs.wordpress.com and on Stitcher and iTunes. The Podcast Under the Stairs is a proud member of Legion Podcast Network. This is Duncan McLeish from Under the Stairs, signing off.
All right. Thanks to all of you out there listening to us, hanging out with us again. It's been an absolute blast having Bo with us. Again, we thank him for everything he does for us and getting us out there to you folks to listen to us. And we're very appreciative of that. And dude knows his movies too, man. So it's just great to be with him. Way more knowledge than I have. I think he and Danny are more alike as far as that. They don't speak the same language I do of, yeah, that dude, and all that kind of stuff. So,
Dude's pants.
Dude's pants.
You know, the guy with the face in the movie.
Keep listening to the show, man. We appreciate it. Bo, thanks again, like I said, man.
Oh, dude, totally my pleasure. It's a blast, and I apologize to your listeners for carrying on like I do. But I love both these movies, and if you haven't seen them, you should totally watch them.
You hear that, everybody? He apologizes. It's okay.
I'd rather have somebody on here that actually loves these movies than just going through the motions, though, because it's all about that. It's about the love of them.
And all these movies, you know, really their only sin is their age.
Right.
You know, they're great movies, but because times have changed, you go to watch them, and you might be confused. But give them time. Let them set. It's worth your effort.
If they remade this one, they'd screw it up. It's that simple.
Right. Can Arthur not have incestuous sex with his sister?
Right. Well, and they'd make it into 3 movies.
Right.
Oh, right. With a big
Box
battle
office.
at the end of each one.
Yeah.
And as Merlin said, which was later coined by Metallica, when a man lies, he murders some part of the world.
Oh, Merlin knows me so well.
We would be lax if we didn't say, you know, Legion Podcast carries our podcast, and it carries a number of really entertaining ones. Some guy has a Podcast Under the Stairs thing. I'm not sure. I think his name is Connor McLeod or something like that.
He's a Highlander, yes.
Beyond that, though, you know, Kiss the Goat, big horror and little podcast on Haunted Hill has been putting out a lot of stuff lately. If you're into horror movies and you're looking for an angle or you're looking for new things to watch, please go by Legion Podcast. Check it out. I would, you know, give you the web address, but I mean, come on, just Google stuff. Legion Podcast.
Google it, you bastards.
Yeah.
Don't forget your ratings on iTunes also, not just for other shows, but for this show in particular.
Right.
If you're listening to the show, go to iTunes and leave a rating and review because that makes a giant world of difference.
Yep. It helps old Ming out.
Hail Ming.
Hail Ming.
Hail Ming.
Hey, we didn't get a Brian Blessed quote for these 2 movies.
I know it.
Brian Blessed quote for Starman. What do you have to say about Starman, Brian?
Die!
Yeah, there was some death. And Excalibur, come on. I mean, you were in that movie, weren't you, Brian? No?
Let the combat begin! To the death!
Hey, he's bloodthirsty this week.
He's ready.
Yeah, he's got that in common with Arthur fighting Lancelot. To the death it is.
Will you shut up?
Well,
right.
Thanks for being with us. This is a great wrap up for the show. Thanks, Bo, for being on the show with us and bringing these movies to the table. They were Bo's choices, and they were every bit of fun to watch as every movie we would have chosen off our own. And a couple of them were already there. No, Excalibur's one of Rick's favorites. And thanks again for being with us.
Say goodnight, Bo.
Good night.
Good night. Au revoir.
And her walking around naked with Donald Sutherland walking around naked. I was like, the hell is this crap?
He was just like, screw it, I'm going.
I'm out of here. He called me a heathen.
Yeah, pretty much.
Hey, we're trying to keep him clean.
Right.
Speaking of cursing.
What's your problem, man?
I don't know. Leave me alone. Baby, I can't wait.
Baby.
Oh. I'm here today, and it is my great privilege.
Yes. Welcome back to Yada Yada, Bo Ransdell's Naked Party. Oh.
Okay. That's the song that we buried my father to.
Really?
No.
Because that would have been awesome.
I can't wait.
No, it was actually the Bobby Brown song from Ghostbusters too.
His name is Vigo, the master of evil, trying to battle my boys. That ain't legal.
Yeah.
Oh, and I think I'm gonna have to.